Antelope Freeway, 1 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/2 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/4 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/8 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/16 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/32 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/64 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/128 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/256 mile. Antelope Freeway, 1/512 mile. We've just passed Antelope Freeway.
This is Dale Matthews. I run the non-commercial website, badcounty.com. It's also available on Facebook and on Twitter, and all of these Freeway Radio shows are also available as podcasts. A little while ago, I was talking with my friend Liz Irish, and I think the audio turned out pretty good, even though we were recording inside a car.
So, Dale, let's talk about the Old Boys Club here in Josephine County.
Right. Well, I don't call them the Good Old Boys Network. I just call it the Old Boys Network. There's something that it revolves around a lot around power and money. Well, gee, that's not a big stretch to figure that out. And there's something that I call the Bank of the Old Boys. And it involves the county commissioners and people who come to them that they know that they're very comfortable with, who want money, especially for things like economic development. Now, economic development money, you would guess would be used for?
I'm guessing starting businesses, helping with employment issues, attracting just fiscal things into the area that's going to create jobs and money for the community.
Economic development.
Yes.
Economic development money. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about where the money is going and how it's being allocated, and if you know the right people and if you're in the in club, then you're much more likely to get that money. I'm going to go out afield a little bit first and talk about canola, the rapeseed. So a group comes in from outside the area and they meet privately with Dave Toler twice. The third meeting is in that little back room where Dave Toler suggests that we need to spend $85,000 from economic development money to support the import of rapeseed into our area. Now note that it's not called Happy Friendly Seed. It's called rapeseed. It's called that for a reason. Well, don't call it that. It's not that. It's canola. It's canola, like the advertisements that you used to see on TV. It's much like corn oil. Well, no. According to the Oregon Department of Agriculture, canola is properly called rapeseed. And one of the reasons it's called that isn't because of some French word that stands for something else. It's because when this stuff comes in, when it's planted in an area where it's hard to grow things, you plant this and you don't need to water it. It's going to grow. You plant this and you don't need to fertilize it. It's going to grow. You plant this and you don't need cross-pollination or it's going to grow.
You know what it sounds like to me? Crabgrass. That's stuff that takes it over my lawn.
It's a relative of the mustard family, which is a huge problem down in California. And you see all these yellow swaths of stuff. I mean, it just sort of takes over, right? It's like it's not too different than kudzu is down in the south. I mean, it will come in and just my land is not producing, and so here's this chance to plant this thing that's going to jump in. Well, one way of describing rapeseed is it's hardy. Another way to describe it is it's pretty aggressive. I mean, if you don't need to do anything to it except just kind of drop it under the ground and run, this stuff is going to grow.
So if I am a landowner next to somebody who plants, and I'll say canola oil, just because
canola, let's call it that from now on, because the other word is so rude.
Yeah, rapeseed wouldn't be polite.
No.
It would be a lot like my neighbor who has, let's say, bamboo growing on my fence line. It's going to just kind of start coming over the fence. It's going to start maybe invading my space a little bit.
Well, let me ask you about this. Now canola has these little tiny seeds. I mean, they're tiny. And animals seem to really like it. Okay? So the animals will come up and eat it, like the deer and stuff. And then, or geese. Geese come down, they eat this. Now, geese have this tendency, after they're done eating, to get up and fly. And then eventually they're going to expel this out the back and with a natural fertilizer attached.
Gotcha. And it's going to grow because it doesn't even need fertilizer.
Right, and they're not just flying around the same field again and again and again in an endless loop. They're going to go over to someone else's place, and now, boom, you've got canola growing on your land. Now, this happened actually. Monsanto was involved in this. Monsanto's the outfit that makes the chemical stuff and rugs that are actually made out of chemicals and etc. And Monsanto's been involved in genetically modifying organisms, which is, makes a lot of people very nervous, but okay, they're probably eating it all the time without knowing it. And Monsanto made huge inroads, especially in Canada and parts of the northern parts of the United States, and they started growing canola, thinking, okay, we can crush these seeds and gotta get an awful lot of these seeds because they're really tiny. And if we crush these, well, we'll make some kind of oil out of it, and not necessarily edible oil, not necessarily the kind that you can put in your car, but there's things maybe we can use this for. And so they had an area where they had licensed, this is my understanding, I hope I get all the details right, they had licensed a farmer to grow their crop. And then there was a farmer at the next field over who accidentally got some of them. I mean, he didn't go over to that guy's field and pull out some stuff and plant it in. It migrated over.
Gotcha.
So Monsanto sued the neighbor.
They sued the neighbor.
They sued the neighbor because the neighbor was growing their crops.
What?
Yeah, the Monsanto says, but these crops belong to us. You can't grow them. And the guy next door says, I don't want to grow them. I don't want them. Yeah, but you are growing them because, look, we found them in your field. Now, first of all, I don't know what they were doing in his field, but okay, we found them in your field. You're now growing them. Stop and cease and desist growing our crops. Say, hey, buddy, I didn't even plant these. You were responsible for getting these things over here. Did they come with geese?
That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
But really, the message of the story is it's going to migrate over.
That's the message of the story. It's going to migrate over. That's quite right. So here's the question. Here's this thing that's being introduced to our area. Now, there are a lot of people who think we should grow native crops and all. I don't know about all that. I do know that there's some people who feel that. And so we're going to import this stuff. Let me tell you about this stuff. Now, when I first started looking into canola, what do I know about that? I'm not a farmer. But I thought, well, let's find out how our $85,000 is going to be spent, because it just passed through like that. I mean, it was just, okay, yeah, $85,000. How many jobs has been created out of this? Well, there's certain to happen. What kind of economic future? Why, there's a company in Chicago that may move here and make an entire plant. We're going to grow so much of these tiny little seeds that we're going to need an entire plant that does nothing but press really? That's really going to happen?
It doesn't sound real.
One of the things about this canola is it's hardy and it's aggressive, and when you move it from one place to another, you're required to keep it in like double containers.
Okay.
It feels a little bit like toxic waste. I mean, you've got there are transportation requirements for just moving this thing from one place to another. You have to be very careful when you move this. Now, I never talk from a piece of paper, as you know, but I have this thing written down about where it's banned. This is somebody says, oh no, it's not banned, it's just restricted. Okay, where it's restricted.
Well, I would think if it were to blow off the truck or a hole was poked in it, then you've got canola oil growing anywhere it wants, because it's going to grow where it lands.
Right, and there are places in the state that are called protected areas. Protected from canola. And it's right around that point where I'm going, what is this stuff? Rapeseed canola cannot be planted in the entire counties of Benton, Clackamas, Lane, Lynn, Marion, Multnomah, Polk, Washington, Yamhill, Crook, Deschutes, Jefferson, Baker, Union, and most of Wallowa.
Holy smokes. What's left?
That's why I had to look at the list, because I can't do that one off the top of my head. And so I go to a meeting of the Josephine County Soil and Water Conservation District. And I'm listening to their explanations because up to the point at which this kicked into full gear, there were a number of meetings that were held that were all positive. The wonderfulness of canola. Boy, you got to get out there and do this canola. Why? It's going to be used for all kinds of things. And they're saying things like, we can't stay dependent on foreign oil together. All the time. Why, we've got to separate ourselves from foreign oil. And people in the audience go, yeah, buddy.
But wait, what does foreign oil have to do with canola oil?
As it turns out, later on they say, well, actually it won't be used for anything having to do as a replacement of oil. So I ask you, Liz, just pull out your BS meter and look here. I mean, does it seem to you as if they're kind of trying to switch the argument on us a little? I mean, not to be that critical, but I mean, my gosh, why are you talking about dependence on foreign oil and getting people all worked up?
Because that's a hot button topic, and if you can get people on board, it's like sales. There's a whole thing about sales that if you have people nodding their head yes and answering yes. So your name is this? Yes, that's my name. And you have kids. Boy, isn't it great to have kids? Yes, it's great to have kids. Boy, isn't Southern Oregon beautiful? Yes, it's beautiful. You get people in the habit of agreeing and feeling good and wonderful, you have a better chance of selling to that person whatever you're selling. That's what that sounds like to me.
Oh, well, that's very good. I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, listen, what do I know? I just want to try to find out some of the facts. And I'm listening to him saying this, and it's kind of tilted. I'm going, no, that doesn't seem quite right. Then I go to this meeting of the Josephine County Soil and Water District with a camera, and I'm listening and I'm taping what they're saying, and people are getting up, well, isn't it this, and what about that? Oh, no, you don't need to worry about that. Oh, they never should have had any restrictions up north in the first place. They've got no reasons to have these restrictions. All those counties I read to you, there's absolutely no reason. Just don't worry about that. Okay, because they want the money, $85,000. They want to go to the Bank of the Old Boys, which is us, which is our county commissioners, to hand it out. And so they bring out this guy, this nice guy that plants stuff in the area, and they bring in, here's our poster boy. Why, he's the first to plant it and everything. And I'm talking to him, and I'm saying, so what do you think about this? He says, the questions that you're bringing up about whether this is good for the county, I really don't know if it's good for the county. I don't want to be involved in something that's not good for the county. This is their poster boy.
There's a problem.
There's a problem. Well, later there was a bigger problem when he had to plow under his field because it wasn't working. Oops, suddenly you don't hear about this guy anymore.
It wasn't working because it wasn't growing? Or it wasn't working because what?
He didn't really say.
It just wasn't working. Huh.
He wanted it gone.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, right. Okay. So these guys are, and I'm looking for clues. Okay, how can it be good? Well, we could grow this for animal feed. Animal feed, yeah. And I'm thinking, brother, have we got this big, burning desire for more and different kinds of animal feed? $85,000 to really get that going? Animal feed, it's our top priority. I don't think so.
Well, I don't think there's a huge need for it here in Josephine County. Did they think that they were going to export it to another county or another area, or what was the thought process?
I haven't heard any plans about this at all. What they're going to do with it? I mean, I've got more. Every time I go to a meeting, I come out with more questions than answers. I go into a meeting and I say, is this really kind of an experiment in our area? No, it's not an experiment. No, don't say it's an experiment. It's not. So I go to the next meeting and they say, well, actually, it's sort of an experiment. Yeah, well, they're not talking to each other.
Well, that's something that's very consistent with most of the county commissioners' meetings. You go into one, you hear what they say, or you listen to it online. You listen to it, and then they come back to another meeting with something completely different about the same subject.
I've heard it many times.
Contracts have been revised from 3 years to 1 year, or from 1 year to 3 years. There's no consistency.
And you say, hey, how did that happen? Where did that happen?
There's no answer.
Because I'm at all the meetings. Mm-hmm. And so how did they change that? Well, we did that behind the scenes. Behind the scenes? You're not supposed to do that behind the scenes. Well, one of the staff people just sort of changed it, and I like it. No, it's supposed to be transparent. Don't get me started. Okay, yes. So I go to this meeting of the Josephine County Soil and Water District. There are people whose entire existence as farmers in this area is built on the idea that they go that extra yard to make sure that their crops are organic.
And I see them. I see them at our growers market.
Yes.
I see all of that produce out there. Some of them are organic. Actually, I think a lot of them are organic. And that would affect these people.
It's harder to do your work that way because, when pests come in and stuff, you've got to go battle them by hand. I mean, you can't just spray them. What if you had ants in your house? Oh, just go spray them. Well, what if you couldn't? What, you can go after every little ant? I mean, that's not easy. Or you put in an ant trap, I guess.
Or you put out other pests that maybe eat ants. There's processes.
And then you've got problems with those pests.
Yes.
Pretty soon you've got to get rid of the cats, and you're running a house.
There's
and running
smart
over
people
cats.
running organic farms.
There are. Okay, so. But they got to be sure that their neighbors aren't spraying because, when you spray, you don't put up, big plastic barriers. I mean, it gets on the wind and it comes over into your area and then you're not organic anymore.
Right.
And you got to be sure that if you're planting a crop, wait for it, you're planting a crop in yours that it doesn't migrate over to mine.
Because then I'm no longer organic.
That's right. So here's the argument that they gave at this meeting. I went to the first one and I videotaped it, and I asked the people who were proponents and opponents to say things, right? Because it's all happy talk about it. None of the meetings are showing both sides. It's just the questions from the audience were saying, well, I'm kind of doubtful about this. And then other people were saying, how do I sign up? And so there was a little bit of both, mostly kind of doubtful from the audience, and some kind of slightly strange audiences, presentations from the people who were there. For example, there's a guy coming down from OSU, and he was coming down here, it seemed like once a week, but on a constant basis. And I asked him, how are you able to come down here all the time? I mean, that's a little bit of a trip. Would I be right in assuming that the university has some kind of grant that's dependent upon things like growing canola, and you are trying to protect the grant for the university by coming down? Because if you're not able to grow it up north, you got to grow it somewhere, you lose your grant. I mean, it's just a guess. Well, I try to be helpful to the public. Yeah, I understand, but is it about a grant? Well, back in 1776.
So the answer is yes. He just isn't going to answer it.
He never did answer that question. Okay,
So we're going to assume. We're just going to make the assumption, and I know what assume means, but we're going to make the assumption that there's probably a grant behind it.
Okay, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Okay, it doesn't necessarily. It'd be easier if you just kind of just level with this. Here's.
But haven't we pretty much already decided honesty is really the best policy when you're dealing with the public, and that seems to be an issue.
Radical.
When it comes to these sort of things. Honesty is the best policy, but for some reason, our county commissioners, our county heads have a hard time really being honest with us, the citizens.
Well, I'm getting there, and so this is coming up for a showdown with honesty. But at this meeting, one of the main proponents stands up and says, all this concern about genetically modified organisms, as everybody knows, genetically modified organisms are organic.
What? What's the definition of organic, Dale?
Well, it's definitely not GMO. Organic is something that would grow rather naturally in nature, and where you're not using special fluffing agents. I'm not using the right words.
No, I'm with you.
But you're not using specials, kind of fertilizer that's been, lots of Monsanto chemicals in it, and you're not using chemicals to stop the pests, and you're not using chemicals and make it, happen faster. Bananas, they come out green, and you got to do all kinds of stuff with them. I mean, that if you take bananas and put them in a bag, a paper bag, that the gas that comes out of the bananas makes them ripen faster. Well, they do all kinds of other stuff to our food all the time to try and make it ripen faster.
And pretty.
And if you've gone down to the store recently and looked at these red apples, they're not red anymore. They're like dark red, and they don't seem to have any flavor. And what have they done to our apples?
Yeah.
Now we're buying like Japanese apples or something because they've got flavor. But what in the world did these guys decide? Don't get me started on that. Okay.
We digress.
All right. So they say this outrageous statement, which is totally false. I mean, even I know that GMO is not organic. What are they trying to do? Why are they saying this kind of thing? So what we did is I went to Commissioner Casanelli and I said, there's been several of these happy meetings about the values of canola. Why don't we have a town hall where we'll talk about all the questions about canola, not get up and rail against it, because what do I know? I just have questions. And where we can do that? Well, Commissioner Toler heard about this, and he just went,
Again, and this is where I start getting confused. If you're really upset because we asked that we have a town hall that can answer some questions and give some clarity on the subject, why would you get upset unless you have something to hide?
Well, because they've had all of the venues up to that point are all pro-canola. Pro. Now here's one where it's not run by the Bank of the Old Boys. It's not run by the Friends of the Old Boys asking for money and being given money without really any investigation. If you lay that out in front of the people and let them just ask any questions they want, you never know. I mean, how can you control the content?
Because what? It's too complicated for us peons to understand?
I think it's because if we're left to ourselves, we're going to ask questions that maybe there's no one can answer. There's no one there that can answer those questions about why canola is wonderful.
Then they go back to the drawing board and they come back with answers,
or they
scrap the plan altogether.
They're not going to do that.
Well, they need to do that. I mean, because that's how the rest of us function, right?
It's not going to happen.
I recently had this conversation about rules and about life rules and how life rules work, and I said, life rules are subject to what your job is, who you are, and what economic background you fall out of. And unfortunately, I wish that weren't the case, but this is the case. The rules for the commissioners, the rules for the Old Boys Club are different than the rules than you and I have to face.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
They don't have to answer questions, or they think they don't, because they never have had to answer questions, and they do what they want because nobody stops them and nobody says you can't do it anymore. You and I, however, come up with a ridiculous plan. They laugh us out of the building, and they tell us never to come back, and then they throw our backpack out the door, right, as we're exiting. There are different rules here, and unless we hold these guys accountable to being transparent, overused term, but to being transparent and answering the questions, and if they can't answer the questions, coming back with a question, an answer, and then if they can't come back with an answer, they need to scrap it and come back with a different plan.
Well, the most important thing in any Old Boys network, whether there's any, some people say, there's none here in Josephine County. Yeah, well, okay, you might want to wake up. But let's suppose that there's none in Josephine County. The most important thing to any Old Boys network is, one, that you control things, that you have some power, and two, you can hand out money to your pals. I mean, this is what government is for. You pull it in with threats. I mean, if you don't pay your taxes, you're in big trouble. You pull it in from the regular peons like you and me, and then you hand it out to your pals.
Yeah, not okay. Not okay.
Oh, it's not okay with me.
So we have...
Let me tell you what came up just before you change, okay? So we have the town hall, but Dave Toler insists that now remember, every gathering up to this point has been pro-canola. And with questions from the audience, that eventually, we've had enough questions. So he insists that the town hall has to be half and half pro, half con.
What?
Well, really, I'm not on the con side. I'm more on the question side. Why would they say this? And why does it have to be transported? And why have they banned it in other areas? Don't say banned.
But why does it have to be half and half?
He had to have half and half. He says, I'm not going to allow a town hall where, unless you present both sides equally, we want half of the time.
What?
So they got half of the time. Otherwise, there would have been no town hall. Absolutely insisted on half of the time for his pro-canola pals.
But what if not half of the citizens are pro-canola?
He gets half the time. He gets all the money. They gave him all the money.
But the ratios are skewed then. It's not really a true representation of where the people feel like it should be. And he shouldn't be allowed to control it like that.
Yeah, well, anyway, I got up and I wasn't saying negative. I was just saying I don't have an answer to this. Every time I go to a meeting, I come out with more questions than when I walked in. What does this mean? Why are they saying it this way? Is it an experiment or not an experiment? What happened to the guy that planted it? Where's the jobs coming out of this? There's really a company that's going to move here and crush all these things? Why are we spending $85,000 on this? I mean, couldn't we just... They need the money? I mean, why are we doing this? Where's the economic benefit?
And were there any answers?
No.
Even one of them?
No answers.
So what was the pro side saying? I'm curious.
Don't call it canola. Don't call it rapeseed. That's very important. Can't call it that. It's bad PR. We don't know who could possibly say that GMO is organic. Well, some of the people sitting right there on your side said it. It's really, don't forget that, we're dependent on foreign oil.
Again, it has nothing to do. It's apples and oranges. We're not importing barrels of oil from. Okay.
But they did appeal to a number of farmers in the area, and I understand this appeal. You've got non-productive land. It's like just dirt clods, right? I mean, it's just like nothing is growing, not even grass. But if you plant this there, even though grass won't grow, this stuff will.
Which is attractive and unattractive in the same sense.
I think so. I mean, I'm thinking, really? You know what? We're going to bald head? Well, anyway, okay. So, what does it take to get money out of the county government? Well, I'll tell you what happened fairly recently. So, some fellows, once again, met privately with Dave Toler. He's kind of in the middle of this. And they come into the county commissioners meeting. This is a little meeting in the back room. We're not going to hold this in front of the cameras at the end basket. No. That's reserved for handing out awards and blather this and ceremony, all that. I mean, plus it's in front of everybody. These fellows come in and they look surprised that there was an audience, because usually I'm the only one there. But when I saw on the agenda that they're coming in, I made a few phone calls, a couple other people made phone calls, and that little back room was packed.
Good.
I think it's good.
As it should have been for the raises for the county employees.
I agree with you. And so they came in and they looked really surprised. And the first thing that they said was, there's been a lot of disinformation out there. Now, misinformation to me means you're just mistaken. You said something and you that was the wrong wording and that's not really what you meant. Disinformation is when you know that it's wrong and you're putting it out there to trick people. Now, just before that meeting, the county sheriff had gotten up at one of the county commissioners' meetings and he started talking about listening devices. These are his words, listening devices that were going to improve our safety in this county.
Okay.
Listening
devices.
Listening devices.
Not video cameras.
No, listening devices.
Because, the whole Big Brother thing all over England.
That's
and,
right.
and there's a lot of video cameras.
That's right.
But that's not what we're talking about.
No, we're not talking about video. We're talking about audio.
Okay.
Listening devices that are listening to what you're saying.
Now, wait. Isn't that illegal?
I asked the sheriff that. I said, in the jail, now we're talking about convicted felons. In the jail, can you watch them with video? Yes, we can. Can you listen in on their conversations? Well, no.
You can't do that anywhere. You cannot listen in to people's conversations. Even if, let's say, for example, and I'll use something that I know a little bit about, adult foster care world, and you want to put an intercom in your clients' rooms, you can do that with their permission, but it doesn't mean you can listen to everything, right? So I'm guessing that this is really way off the track of what should be done, and it's an abuse of their
So
power.
what the sheriff said is, he really said it. He said, what? You're not in favor of keeping the children safe?
Okay, that's like saying that we're going to not become dependent on foreign oil anymore because we're raising canola oil. What does one have to do to the other?
Every time someone says it's for the children.
Run screaming.
Yeah. So I talked to him afterwards, and I said, Sheriff, using your same logic of having listening devices planted around the county to keep the children safe. I said, you know as well as I do that sometimes a little kid seems missing but is just sleeping underneath an awning somewhere.
Right.
Or is actually abducted by someone that takes them away or runs away. I said, using the same thing about the same logic about keeping the children safe, truly now, practically, I don't mean about Big Brother and how ominous this sounds, but practically, wouldn't it really make more sense just to put a little chip in every kid? I mean, you'd be able to find out where they were. And as long as you're going to do that, wouldn't it just make as much sense to put a chip in every worker because maybe they're goofing around or having an affair or talking with some other company or doing something they're not supposed to, and we could keep track of each other, and who would really care? As many people say, I don't care if they listen to my telephone conversation. Why, give me Gmail. You know about Gmail. It's put out there by Google. Gmail is free. But Google retains the right, I'm not making this up, retains the right to read your email. That's why it's free. Why do they want to do that? For marketing purposes. They can read your email. Oh, I don't care because I never say anything. Well, but I do care. And I don't want to see stuff like that go down that path. I'm not doing anything illegal either. But, I mean, every step we take toward that is a step closer. Look, I'm going to sound like I'm crazy, but I'm trying not to be. I'm trying to pretend like I'm not.
Trying not to be crazy or something.
Yeah, I'm trying not to sound like it. But the thing is that, I said to the sheriff, we could plant listening devices every few feet down the road if that's really where we want to live. There's a scene in a movie called Minority Report with Tom Cruise. Right, and in this scene, in this one little scene, and it's got really nothing much to do with the rest of the movie, he's walking through a mall, and advertisements on the wall are saying, "Hey, Tom, when was the last time that you had your teeth cleaned was 3 weeks ago. Isn't it about time to do it? Hey, Tom, don't you think it's about to, that car's getting a little old?" And all the ads have information about Tom inside of them, and they're calling him out by name. Now, how do they know that that's him? A little chip. Yeah. But it helps the government keep track of you. And what if you get lost? You could have Alzheimer's and kind of wander off, and we got to help you. And also, your children. We got to protect your children, Liz. We're going to protect them for you.
I saw recently in the Mail Tribune an article about Norway releasing all of the tax information and asset information for every single private citizen and public citizen in that country, and they did it under the name of transparency.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, we're going to want everybody to have that information.
I mean, at what point are we just getting way over the top over this? So we have a sheriff that wants to install, for the safety of our children, listening devices. Right, listening devices. And where will they be installed?
Well, there's supposed to be one tested at the airport, at Medford International Airport. Supposed to be one tested at North Valley High School. And I said to him, "Are you going to put it in the Constitution class?" And then another one, another one installed in the courthouse, in the courtrooms. And I said, "Are you going to put it at the table of defense attorneys so you can listen to what they're saying to their clients?" They didn't like that kind of question. So they really didn't like the one about the Constitution class.
Are the parents being told that these devices that
we checked it out with the school board, and the school board said, "Yes, please, come on down. This sounds like a brilliant idea."
Not to me as a parent.
No, and I don't think the teachers know about this either. Yeah, right. So
when I was standing in line to, let's say, pay a traffic ticket, is there going to be a device that listens? There
could potentially be, and they're suggesting that they put it all throughout the courthouse. So, but I'm going to get to what it does and what isn't, what it doesn't do. Okay. So the Courier, this outstanding organ of free press in our community, they do a front page article, "The Future of Law Enforcement." Not, "Some people say it might be the future," or "Is this a good idea?" or "Sheriff says it's a good idea." No, "The Future of Law Enforcement, listening devices will, save our children," or something like that. Who writes these headlines? Well, I know who it is. I think it's Kevin Whittison every time. This guy writes these headlines. It's like it's done. It's a done deal. Okay, that's the future of law enforcement. No, I don't. If North Korea wants to develop these things, go for it, buddy. But I don't want it developed in Josephine County.
It doesn't sound good at all.
All right. So
on any level. That's
the listening devices thing. Okay, so now we go to the meeting where the guys come into the bank of the old boys and they want their money. And the first thing they do is they walk in. Now, this is Herb Carter and Gerard Fitzgerald. Now, I'm going to say their names because they've gotten up several times in public and talked about it. And they walk in and they look surprised. There are people in the audience.
Well, goodness, we don't want witnesses. Sorry, that was my
the first thing that Gerard Fitzgerald says to the commissioners is, "There's been a lot of disinformation about our product. People have been calling it a listening device." Well, the sheriff is sitting right there, and the sheriff is the one that called it a listening device. They've been calling it a listening device, and it's no such thing. Under no stretch of the imagination is it anything like a listening device. And his summary was, it's a device that listens.
Oh, it's not a listening device. It's a device that listens. That's so incredibly different. I'm glad he clarified. Are you feeling better now?
And then they're describing this and they're saying, now listen, people have to consent to have this in their office. And you can't possibly activate this device that listens unless you press a button. If you don't press the button, it won't go on. Let me make that clear to you. Let me make sure that you lunkheads who don't understand anything will get this point. This is not a quote, but
right.
It won't activate, it will not activate, it cannot activate unless you press a button. Unless you don't press the button, in which it turns on automatically. What?
Oh, again, thanks for the clarification, buddy.
No, here's the way it's supposed to work. Commissioner Castanelli's trying to ask questions, and they're treating her. At one point they said, well, you really wouldn't understand.
What does that mean?
Well, that she wouldn't understand. It was, to me, I sort of took it as little lady, this may be beyond. She says, I've got an engineering degree.
Yeah, she's an educated lady.
Yeah, I think I can understand this, and you're asking for public money, and you better make sure we all understand.
Right.
Right, okay. No, you wouldn't understand. Let me explain it to me. Let me tell you what the facts are. Listen, now, if there's a gunshot, I'm thinking backfire of a car, we'll know what caliber of gun it is.
What?
Right. But my question is, if this is not a listening device, how does it know there's been a gunshot?
Because
well, how does it know this?
Well, because you don't really have to push the button. It's just listening. That's silly.
It's a device that listens.
It's silly.
It's not a listening device. Come on, get with it.
I think any logical person could say this is ridiculous.
Okay. So, I love all this. But I'm going to get off the listening device kind of thing. What they did was they came into the. So that's one entire thing about are they being completely honest, not honest, etc. The most amazing thing to me was they came in and they did not bring with them a business plan. They did not bring with them a prototype. They did not bring with them a marketing plan. They did not bring with them a ramp-up plan of how many hundreds of jobs this is going to be. It's software. And what we're going to develop the software here, or what we're going to do is we're going to take, retired farm workers and foresters who are missing a couple of fingers, and first we teach them how to use a computer, and then we're going to teach them how to make software. I'm not really sure where all of these hundreds of jobs are going to come from. But once again, these guys said, if you don't give us the $25,000, now these are people who are staunch supporters of grants pass forever, why, that's the best community in the world. If you don't give us the $25,000, we're going to leave town.
A quote comes to mind. Warren Buffett said, if something's too complicated to understand, don't invest in it. Only invest in things you understand. Money-making things do not have to be complicated. It's basic common sense. And I have to tell you, I don't understand these things.
Well, they came in, it seemed to me they came in knowing that they were going to get the money. I mean, imagine that you and I, just as regular citizens, anyone listening to this, decide to go down to a bank and say, I want $25,000. Okay, what kind of plan do you have? Well, I don't have a business plan to show you, but I still want it. Yeah, well, have you got a prototype? No, but here's what they did. I'm not making this up. They had a dictionary with them. And they slapped the dictionary down on the table and said, it's about that size.
What?
Can I have my $25,000?
What? It's about that size?
Yes. They walked in with the dictionary under their arm, no business plan, and they weren't even registered with the state properly to do this kind of thing. Not even registered with the state properly to do this, and they wanted their money.
You know what? Get out of our office. We're done listening. Move on.
This is the bank of the old boys.
No. Get out. Sorry, table it, come back when you actually have something to show us and a business plan. Don't come back until then.
Sandy Castanelli was the one lone dissenter, and she said, I want to see the actual device. No kidding. I would like to meet with the inventor. Well, he's out of town. I want to see a business plan. Well, that we can obviously do. And so they came back and met with her again, and guess what was missing? No prototype, dictionary. No inventor, no business plan, and a lot of talk about how she really wouldn't understand. So at one point they're saying, okay, now I want you to know that when there's a perpetrator in a building, where there'll be a dot, a different colored dot, and the fire department will have and the police will have these displays, and on the display it'll have the little dot, and they know that he's going from room to room. Well, that means a listening device. This is only listening now in each room, and they'll track this guy. And I said, well, how are they going to track the guy? How does the device know that that's the perpetrator and not the 5 other people in the room, so that you can have a different colored dot? We can't answer that question. That's proprietary.
We've just passed Antelope Freeway.